So I'm not really sure what I'm doing. I've never made a video before, but I want to try something and see if it helps. I am going to share my story. Some of you might be interested, some of you might not, and that's fine. It's more for me. Let me think of where to start. So some of you may or may not know that Richard and I have lost 2 babies within a year and a half of each other. We lost our first one in November of 2018. I had a diagnosed subchorionic hemorrhage at week 7. They pretty much just put me on pelvic rest. We did take it kind of easy. I was really sick, which normal pregnancy stuff, at least I thought. Around week 12 or so, I started TMI, having a lot of bleeding, which in a pregnancy is very scary. And so I, went into the hospital because it was more than I was comfortable with. And they just said it was because of the hemorrhage and just to take it easy. And then I was sent home. I continued bleeding off and on pretty much for the rest of that pregnancy. We flew to Texas when I was 19 weeks pregnant with a boy, and we went to a wedding, and the day after the wedding I had some cramping, lost a lot of blood, had some clotting, so I thought I was having some Braxton Hicks contractions, tried to lay down, see if it would get better, and it did not. So decided I needed to go into the hospital and see if everything was okay. Sorry, Bellamy needed my assistance, so I got cut off in that last video. But so we arrived at the hospital and they immediately get me in, and I'm basically having contractions, like very painful, down in the front and in the back, which I had back labor with Bellamy because he was sunny side up. And the doctor, they did an ultrasound and said baby looked okay, and they didn't check me or anything to see if I was dilated at all. They get me upstairs to labor and delivery, just in case anything happens, and they get me upstairs, and I'm still passing a lot of blood, and finally, after probably 7 or 8 hours of having contractions every couple minutes, lasting for 30 to 45 seconds, the doctor comes in and she checks me, and the look on her face, just immediately I knew. She said, "You're 3 centimeters dilated. There's nothing that we can do at this point because you're only 19 weeks." So they came in, I got an epidural, and not even as soon as I got the epidural, I delivered Ezra. Breathing, he was alive for about 30 to 40 minutes, and we spent a few hours with him. So yeah, that's the story of Ezra. we were presented with the option that there was a funeral home in the town that would cremate him for free. So we thought that it would be a good way to be able to keep him with us, because, you know, he's always going to be with us, so I carry him with me always. I know that it's a tragedy. We grew so much as people after that, but we wanted to make a sibling for Bellamy so bad. So we decided to try again after a little while, about 10 months or so after we lost Ezra. We got pregnant again with our rainbow baby. We were at the time living in Arizona. So I went in early at 7 weeks and was yet again diagnosed with a subchorionic hemorrhage. So this time I was a little bit better prepared to take it easy and make sure that my body got what it needed. Also at that time we had just decided a few weeks before we found out I was pregnant that we were going to be moving back to Iowa so that we could be around family and so that Bellamy could grow up with his cousins. So we found a house in Iowa while we were here for a wedding. We flew back home to Arizona and got our house ready to list, got it listed, got it sold, bought a house in Iowa. My mom actually came out to Arizona to help finish the end of packing since I had found out that I was pregnant in the middle of that. And because I was really sick, again, just throwing up a lot, couldn't eat, just had no energy, so tired. So we got the move made, got really, really sick on our drive, moving back to Iowa. Ended up, the night we got back, going to the hospital for some dehydration, got some fluids, then was sent home after a few hours. Probably a month or two after that, my mom came back out to Iowa again and helped around the house so that I could rest to try to get this hemorrhage to shrink, because that's one thing that's just really needed is a lot of rest and drink a lot of water, and that's not easy to get rest with a very wild child. Yes, honey. Sorry, Bellamy again. So I went to my 17-week ultrasound while my mom was here, and this was back in January, so COVID hadn't really hit yet. So she was able to go to the appointment with me. We saw that the hemorrhage had completely dissolved, which we were able to finally breathe a sigh of relief. So in the second trimester, feeling better, hemorrhage is gone, starts feeling like a normal pregnancy. I, have my glucose test at week 28. It's a smidge high, so I go back like after the weekend and do the 3-hour one. I passed that one. I have my 32-week or my 30-week ultrasound, excuse me, and at that point, or not ultrasound, excuse me, just appointment. And my doctor measured my belly. It was measuring a little big, which I had felt because I was very stretched and just big for being only 30 weeks. I had mentioned that baby girl wasn't moving as much because Bellamy moved a ton when I was pregnant with him. And so, you know, just to ease my concern, she sent me to get a non-stress test, which there they just hook you up to a monitor to monitor any contractions, and then they put a monitor on baby to like check her movements, heartbeat, make sure, like, see if it's steady, kind of just see heart rate when she moves and things like that. So they hook me up. I do this non-stress test for about, I think it was half an hour. The doctor looked at the results. They weren't superb, but they didn't really see anything concerning. So she marked me to get an ultrasound at 32 weeks. So I made the appointment for that. Right at about a day before my 32-week appointment, I hadn't really been feeling a lot of movement, and it was kind of getting concerning. I had tried really everything I could to get her to move. So I waited the next morning for the doctor's office to open. This was on a Tuesday, on April 28th. I went into my doctor, or I called in, went to my doctor, did a non-stress test. They didn't really like what they saw, wanted me to get some extra testing done, so they sent me to the hospital. So they wheeled me over there because it's one of those that's kind of connected to my doctor's office, and hooked me up to the non-stress testing, brought in someone to do a biophysiological ultrasound to check on baby's movement, to see how she was breathing, how she was, like, if she was able to move well, just check on kind of anything that could be wrong. And so they did that, and they brought in a doctor to tell me that I had a lot of fluid, and so did baby girl, and it looked concerning. It looked like she wasn't happy in there anymore, and that they were going to do another ultrasound and look at a couple more things. So they come in for the ultrasound and look a little bit closer, and they see that she was super filled with fluid, kind of everywhere, and that she really needed to come out. So they kind of explained that they kind of said within 24 hours to kind of expect maybe a C-section. At this point, Rich had taken Bellamy over to some family's house to stay and was trying to work all that out so he could get to me at the hospital, because I'm there by myself. You know, mask on because of COVID. Scared. The doctors kind of leave and come back after looking at some more of the scans and decide she really needs to come out, like, right now. So I just found that out, and they were about to take me back to prep me for the C-section, and Richard walks through the door So I have to break it to him that we are heading back for a C-section. Baby girl's coming 8 weeks early, and she's very sick. So they hurried and gave me a steroid shot as soon as they knew I was going to be delivering her, to try to help her lungs to develop as much as possible, because everything was just so sudden. She, just one moment. Sorry, Bellamy. It's hard to make videos with toddlers. So she had gone undiagnosed with something called fetal hydrops, which means that there's fluid in 2 or more compartments of the body. She kind of had it everywhere. So fast forward, they get me prepped for C-section. They take me in there, give me the spinal block, get everything ready, bring Rich in. They get her out, and immediately have to take some fluid from her because she's very, very, very swollen. They struggled to get her heart beating. They gave her chest compressions for probably about the first 20 minutes while they were trying to knock some fluid off of her, so that they could take her up to the NICU. So this is all happening on the other side of the room while they're stitching me up from my surgery. And they finally get her to where she can get up to the NICU. They finish with me, take me to recovery. We wait there for a little bit while they get Miss Delilah Sue, completely settled into the NICU and hooked up to everything she needs to be on, and figure out some things, run some tests, all that kind of stuff. So, doctor comes and informs us kind of a list of things that's wrong. Of course, we knew the fetal hydrops. She also, because of that, had pulmonary hypertension, was severely anemic. So basically they had her on a ventilator. They had her on a few different pain medications. They had her on a couple medications to try to get her blood pressure up, to try to get everything else to kind of function properly. She I think after day 1 or 2 got a PICC line to make it a little bit easier to give her her meds, and she was on blood transfusions and platelets and all kinds of things. We were allowed to stay at the hospital, obviously, because I was in recovery. So we had our Tuesday, and I was in recovery through Friday. My parents drove up Friday and met us that evening, so that we could go back to the hospital and be with her. And a week after she was born, things just really took a turn for the worse, and they basically told us that she was going to continue to keep coding. She also, for that entire week, could not produce urine. So that was backing up in her, so her kidneys were failing. Only one side of her heart was pumping, and it was the left side, which you need the right side to kind of pump for both. That's the one that does the most work. And so they basically just, you know, as well as doctors can, kind of asked us end-of-life questions, which they had kind of been trying to ask for that whole week, but you know, obviously we just the whole time said, do everything you can to save her, not really knowing the depth of her sickness. And so they asked me if I wanted to hold her, because I hadn't been able to hold her yet. She had still been very swollen. She never got to open her eyes because she held a lot of the swollenness in her face and in her belly. And you know, she never cried or anything like that. So anyways, they asked me if I wanted to hold her. I said yes. They basically let me know, like, this is going to be kind of the end. You know, so be prepared for that. Having been through kind of everything with Ezra, I kind of was a little bit more prepared for it. I'm so sorry, you guys. And so they kind of sent us, you know, back to get her prepared for that, kind of clean her up a little bit. They had a sweet, sweet woman come in and take pictures of everything for us, so that we could have all of the memories that we have and just to document things. They then, you know, let us hold her until the end. And thankfully the hospital had made an exception and allowed a grandparent at a time to come up and be with one of us at a time. And so thankfully a few grandparents got to meet her. And so I guess, oh, and we also did decide to have her cremated as well, so that we can keep her with us too. Because they're always going to be our babies. We've got Ezra James and Delilah Sue watching over us. So yeah, that's our 2 angel babies. Sorry, this is kind of a condensed version. There's obviously a whole lot more that goes into that. But it's really hard to tell a story like this on a video. But I thought it might be healthy to just kind of get my story of what happened out there. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, actually. So yeah.